Hey guys, Ryan over at Maverick Metalworks. Today I'm going to show you how to draw a fixture table in a 2D CAD program. We use FlashCut, which also runs our Plasma Table, but there's a plethora of different programs you can use. But here's kind of how I run through the program. Now, for those that don't know, a fixture table is a welding and fabrication table that allows you to use clamps anywhere in the table. The way that we do this is we have holes that are scattered throughout in a pattern. These ones are 2 inches on center and allows us to use different clamps anywhere on the table. That way you can keep everything nice and square and you can build temporary jigs throughout the table in a very quick manner. Now, this table was built about 2 weeks after we got our plasma table. We knew we needed a bigger table. We were building a bunch of railings at the time, and a fixture table was the best way to go about it, and we used the crap out of this thing. I bought the plans from Austin Lanier. He is a phenomenal fabricator. If you guys haven't seen his work, definitely check it out. He's on Facebook and all over the place. He does some stellar work. And I'm basing the one that we're building today off of his table, but I'm building a smaller version. The reason I'm doing a smaller version is we do a lot with axles. We work with Jeeps, custom fabrication on suspension for vans. We're doing an international scout now, just about anything that is off-road related. And this one is great. Obviously you can put an axle on it, but it takes up a lot of space. We need another table, another working surface. So we're gonna base the dimensions off of the very first welding table I ever built. This table here I built 5-6 years ago. It was actually my very first welding project, so don't judge the welds on it, but it's very functional. It does exactly what it needs to do. It actually is adjustable height, which I think I've adjusted a total of 4 times, but it was a cool thought when I built it. But the idea was I'd put a jack stand on one side, a jack stand on the other, drop an axle on, and now I have a surface that's at a good height that I can weld on trusses or Inner-C Gussets or whatever we need to. The table worked. It's very functional. We still use it to this day for anything that doesn't need to be perfectly square. But the problem is, especially with the design without a leg in the center, the table ends up drooping down in the center, and it's just not very reliable for keeping something square. So that's when we built our fixture table, and it is much more reliable than what we have here. So as we are kind of going through things, we decided we needed to build another table to have another work surface. That way this small little axle isn't taking up the entire table and stopping us from being able to build something like these railings, and we're not fighting over the table. We didn't want to build another one this size just because we are limited in space, but we're going to make a smaller version. Again, we're matching the size of the table before, which is 70 inches wide, 30 inches deep, which will fit an axle perfectly. This axle here is a Dana 44. It's actually a crate axle, a brand new axle, and we're building a jig off of it. That way we have perfect measurements. The axle that we are going to be correcting is another JK44 Rubicon axle that is bent. The tube itself is bent, as well as the Inner-C. So we'll use the 3 stands over here to set the tube properly. We will check the bend that's in it, and we'll be able to make sure that everything's nice and square. And then we'll use a digital angle finder like this to check the Inner-C upper and lower on both sides. Make sure we have the correct angles, make sure we have the correct spacing, and then put it back in the vehicle after welding in Inner-C Gussets. Another reason that we do it is for trusses like this one. This is a truss that we're building in-house. It's for a Kingpin Dana 60s going in a 4-wheel drive conversion van. And we want to make sure that the axle stays nice and straight when we're welding. So we will clamp it to the table. We'll actually preload it slightly with a chain binder. We'll put it on the table, we'll weld it out, and then once everything cools, it should stay nice and straight. So enough talking about kind of the projects we're going to use it for. Let's get to drawing. My goal is, let's see if we can draw this in under 60 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and speed it up to 2 times. That way you're looking at 30 minutes worth of video instead of 60. Here goes nothing. those of you that made it this far into the video, I appreciate you watching. Hopefully you learned something, or if nothing else, at least you enjoyed watching the process. Our next step will be to set up all of our lead-ins and our cut path. We use Flash Cut for that as well. It is a CAD, CAM, CNC all-in-one program, so we even use that to run our plasma table. When we set the cut path, we want to make sure that we bounce around a lot. There's a lot of holes, which means a lot of heat, so we're going to try and go back and forth and bounce around a lot, making sure that the one area doesn't get too hot and the sheet doesn't end up warping and causing those holes to move slightly. We want to keep our 2 inches on center. Another thing to note is plasma is not the most accurate process. It is accurate, I'm not saying it's not, but there's a slight taper and there's just informalities that aren't quite ideal, especially when you're trying to drop a clamp into a perfectly 5/8 hole. If there's that taper, it causes it to rock. So the last time we did this, we oversized our holes ever so slightly. They're 5/8 holes. I think we went to a 0.63 last time. And it works, don't get me wrong. It works just fine. But I think we can do better. So this time, what we're going to do is we're going to undersize our holes and go through with a mag drill and drill them out. I'm still going to use the plasma cutter to set our sequence and do the majority of the hole. The next thing to note is with plasma, anytime you cut the hole, as it goes around with the torch and it gets the material hot, it ends up causing a hardened surface right around the hole. That is very hard to drill through. You can run a reamer through it, you can use a burr bit, but what we found that actually works really well is we're going to undersize the holes a decent amount. We're going to use a 7/16 hole instead of a 5/8, and what that does is it allows us, when we drill the hole keeps the drill bit centered as you're starting it, but the majority of the cutting tool or the drill bit is cutting mild steel, and the hardened material is in the center. It's only a small amount of the drill bit, so it ends up cutting a lot better, and it's a lot less, it's not as hard on your consumables. So that'll be our process. It'll still take a long time. Trevor's kind of our apprentice, and he's going to absolutely hate me by the end of the day, but that's okay. The table is going to be extremely accurate. Tools are going to work better, and it's worth a little bit extra effort now for having the table long into the future. If you guys are interested in watching the actual build process of the table, that'll be my next video that we make. I'm going to film going through the actual cutting portion of it on the plasma table, a little bit in the cleanup, the assembly, how we're going to use our current fabrication table as a flat surface and make sure that everything's nice and clean, the way that we're going to build brackets to hold everything together and use those brackets to flatten everything out. And we'll try to go as in depth as possible without being too wordy and letting you really just watch the process. So if you're interested, stay tuned. And again, I appreciate you guys watching the video.